Hey guys, so today's lesson is on solving quadratics by factoring. We've been practicing factoring for the last week and a half or so. So now we're actually solving using factoring. There's about 4 steps you need to follow, and I'll walk you through with them before we get started. Step 1 is to convert to standard form. So again, you have ax squared plus bx plus c, but you also need to make sure you have equals 0 on the right hand side. That's super important. Step 2 is to factor. We went over factoring. You can factor different ways. You can multiply a times c, look for multiples. You can factor by doing greatest common factor. You could do both, but you want to factor. Step 3 is to set each factor equal to 0. You should have 2 of them. Step 4 is to solve for your variable in each factor. Okay, so I'll walk you through some examples. I'm working on the skills factor, which ends up being your homework. I'm going to be doing the odd number problems. You have the evens assigned for homework. Okay, so I'll be doing the first few problems. First one is number 3. So we are in standard form. We also have equals 0, so we're looking good. Now we want to factor. Okay, so I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 35. By the way, I'm not going into super details of factoring. You should have looked at those videos prior to this one. But anyways, I'm looking for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 35 but add to 2. Okay, 2 numbers that do that are 5 and 7. They need to multiply to negative 35 but add to positive 2. So the 5 is the one that ends up being negative. Only one of them does since they multiply to a negative. So I'm going to end up writing them as factors now. We have m minus 5, m plus 7, okay? And then I messed up here because I should have left some space to write equals 0, so that's what we have. All right, now you want to take each factor and set each factor equal to 0, okay? In order for these to get multiplied and be equal to 0, that means we need to see what would make each of them 0. Okay, so for the first one, we have m minus 5. So write it down, make it equal to 0. You could drop your parentheses. Second one is m plus 7 equals 0. And then you solve for your variable now. So for the first one, I'm going to do plus 5 plus 5. So I have m equals 5. Okay, that's one solution. The next one is minus 7, so I have m equals negative 7. That's my second answer. So that's it. My answers are 5 and negative 7. By the way, this hopefully reminds you of what we worked on in class a long time ago. We converted this to factored form, and by doing that, we're able to find, remember in factored form, these represent R1 and R2, which are the roots. So you actually found the roots. So you can actually graph this quadratic. You know it's facing up because your first term, your a value is positive, and you know that these are the roots that it goes through. So you know it's going to go through negative 7 and 5, aka your zeros. Okay, just wanted to piece that together for you. Okay, number 5. So for number 5, we have x squared plus 8x equals 0. It is in standard form. Now, I don't have a c value. Whenever you don't have a c value, you could look at both terms and think, okay, what's my greatest common factor? Can I factor something out? And in this case, you can. You can factor out an x from both. All right, so what I'm going to do is put the x outside since I'm factoring it out. And I'm left with, here I have 2 x's. X squared means x times x. And if I'm taking 1 out, I'm left with 1. So I have x plus, here my x's cancel, so I have 8. And then just bring down your equals 0. So what you want to do is now set each factor equal to 0. Okay, so I have, my first factor is just x, so I have x equals 0. My second factor is x plus 8, set that equal to 0. Okay, now the first one is solved for already. X is isolated, my variable is alone, so I have x equals 0. My second one, though, I need to solve, so I'm going to subtract 8 on both sides. I have x equals negative 8, and that's my answer. So my 2 answers are x equals 0 and x equals negative 8. Again, those are my roots. They're my zeros. If I graph, it's going to go through those points. So just keep all of that in mind. My a value is positive. So even if I wanted to sketch it, you can. Okay, actually, I drew that wrong. I should probably draw more negative since I'm going to be at negative 8. But negative 8 is right here. 0 is here. Okay, so those are my roots. I know my parabola is facing up. So it would look something like that. Okay, so it's pretty cool how you can sketch just from factoring. You don't have to sketch on your homework, by the way. All right, number 7 is not in standard form. Okay, so my goal is to get it to standard form. I know it's not in standard form because I have a 32 on that side, so I want to move it over to the left. So I'm going to subtract it. Okay, you do the opposite. So minus 32. So now I have negative t squared plus 12t minus 32 is equal to 0. Okay, now it's in standard form. It's equal to 0. That's what we wanted. Now what I'm going to do is I notice that I have a negative in the front and I also have another negative. So whenever you have a negative in the front, you can always factor it out and make your life a little bit easier. So I'm going to divide each term by -1, okay, to factor it out. Okay, now because it's being factored out, you want to write it outside of your parentheses. Dividing by -1 only changes your sign. So for the first one, I have a negative t squared, it turns to a positive t squared. Plus 12t turns into minus 12t. Minus 32 turns into plus 32. And then 0 is not affected. Okay, you can leave that as it is. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put my parentheses out here. All right. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and factor the inside now. Okay. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to, let me do this on the side. Two numbers that multiply to 32, but add to -12. Okay. So you can try to think of two numbers that do that. So obviously 1 and 32 is not going to work. 2 and 16 will not work. We could do 3 doesn't work. We could do 4 and 8. Will 4 and 8 work? Yes, they do. 4 and 8 do work because if they're both negative, they'll multiply to positive 32 and they'll also add to -12. Okay, so -4 and -8 works. So what I'm going to do is just rewrite everything. So -1 stays outside. Okay, my factors are going to be x minus 4, x minus 8. Bring down your equals 0. Okay, now you set each factor equal to 0. This -1, you don't have to worry about it, okay? It doesn't have a variable in it, so it's not necessary. So now I'm going to have x minus 4 equals 0, x minus 8 is equal to 0, and then just solve. So on both sides, I'm going to add, here I add 4, so I have x equals 4 is one answer. Over here, I have plus 8 plus 8. So I have x equals 8. That's my other answer. So I have x equals 4, x equals 8. I know my quadratic is facing down because I have a negative. Okay, I have a negative a value. If I were to distribute that back in, it would make my leading term negative. So if I wanted to graph this, okay, I would have a 0 at 1, 2, 3, 4. I would also have one at 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. And then I could also know that it's opening down. Okay, so it's going to look something like this. Okay, again, you don't have to graph. I'm just showing you. All right, number 9, we have 2t squared plus t minus 3. All right, so for this one, it is in standard form. Now, I have a 2 in the front, but I can't divide it away because these terms are not divisible by 2, so that doesn't work. All right, so instead, we're just going to go ahead and try to factor this. So again, here's my x. 2 times -3 is -6. Okay, and then my number in the middle is not there, so that means it's a 1. So two numbers that multiply to -6 add to 1. It's going to be 3 and -2. I've done this for a while, so if it takes you longer to do this, that's 100% fine. Okay, so now I have t, it's my variable. So I'm going to have plus 3 minus 2 equals 0. Okay, I got the plus 3 minus 2 from here. Again, if this factoring part is super confusing, you need to go back and study the videos that I uploaded in previous lessons. All right, we're not done. Remember, if your a value is not 1, you need to divide by it. Okay, so I'm going to divide these by 2. 3 is not divisible by 2, so I'm going to take that, put it in front of t. 2 is divisible by 2. It ends up being 1. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this. This is 2t plus 3. The other one is t minus 1 is equal to 0. Okay, now that we've factored, you set each factor equal to 0. So the first one is 2t plus 3 equals 0. Second one is t minus 1 equals 0, and then you solve for each one. Okay, so first one, subtract 3 on both sides. 2t is equal to negative 3. Isolate t by dividing by 2, so you get t is equal to negative 3 over 2. That's one solution. On the right-hand side, we're going to add 1 to both sides. T is equal to 1. Okay, so our two solutions are negative 3 halves and 1. It's 100% fine to get a fraction. Okay, and the last one I'm going to do for you guys is number 13. Okay, so for this one, you're going to go ahead and find the zeros. Again, you're doing the same thing. It says determine the zeros of each quadratic function if possible. So for number 13, what's different about this one is it's not equal to 0. All you have to do is change this to set it equal to 0. Okay, so I'm going to have 0 is equal to x squared plus 11x plus 30. Now, in the other problems that we've been doing, the 0 is on the right. Honestly, it does not matter if 0 is on the right or the left. It's the exact same thing. So I'm just going to solve as I normally would. Okay, so I'm going to factor. I want two numbers that multiply to 30 but add to 11. Okay, so factors of 30. 1 and 30 isn't going to work. 2 and 15 does not work. 3 and 10 does not work. There's no way that could add to 11. 4 doesn't work. 5 and 6 works because if you add them, they add to 11. Okay, so 5 and 6 works. So I'm going to put 5 and 6 here. So my factors are x plus 5, x plus 6. All right. Now we just need to set each one equal to 0. Sorry, I keep rotating this. So it's x plus 5 equals 0. Next one is x plus 6 equals 0, and then solve. On the left, we subtract 5, x equals negative 5. On the right, we subtract 6, x equals negative 6. Okay, so we have two solutions, x equals negative 5 and x equals negative 6. All right, that's all I'm working on with you guys. We did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 practice problems. If you want more practice, I uploaded an extra video. Again, your steps are converting to standard form if it's not already. Factor and then set each factor equal to 0. Solve for your variable in each factor. Okay. Make sure you stop by office hours on Thursday if you have any questions. Other than that, have a great day.